Hello everyone and greetings from Portland, Oregon. My name is Lynn Fujigami Parks and I'm the Executive Director for the Japanese American Museum of Oregon, formerly the Oregon Nikkei Endowment. We'll miss seeing many of you this year in person, but we hope that you're staying safe and healthy and well, and we look forward to connecting with everyone through Tadaima. We'd like to express our deep appreciation to the organizing committee for all of their hard work to put this together and to bring everyone together for the virtual pilgrimage. We'll be kicking off our participation with a presentation about Portland's Japantown, and in the coming weeks we'll be sharing artifacts from our collection on Museum Mondays at the Curator's Corner. And then in August, we'll be sharing some very exciting news about the opening of our new museum. As we honor our community's journey during the pilgrimage, let us please keep in the forefront what our country is experiencing at this moment. Many of us can speak to the generational trauma that our own community has suffered for decades through 4 to 5 generations, but I cannot begin to fathom what the trauma from 4 centuries of racism and oppression must feel like. Black lives matter, and we must join the fight to demand justice and real change for our country. This is a defining moment in our history, so let us continue to stand in solidarity and bring the enduring spirit of Gaman and Gambate to the fight against systemic racism, injustice, and the inequities that have plagued our country for centuries and hundreds of years. And this includes the terrible losses suffered by the indigenous and native people of this land. Before I turn things over to Jennifer Fang, our education director, I'd like to acknowledge the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Cowlitz bands of Chinook, Tualatin Kalapia, and Malala tribes that inhabited the land that the city of Portland now occupies, and where a once very large and vibrant Japantown existed. And now Jennifer will share the story of that Japantown. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jennifer Fang, and I am the Director of Education at the Japanese American Museum of Oregon in Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. I'm really excited to be a part of this year's virtual pilgrimage, and I'm really looking forward to all of the programming on offer in the coming weeks. So some of you might know the Japanese American Museum of Oregon by our old name, the Oregon Nikkei Endowment, Oregon Nikkei Legacy Center. We changed our name in January of this year, and we're currently in the midst of moving into a new building and creating a new permanent exhibition about the history of the Nikkei in Oregon. We're also creating a new temporary exhibition entitled Grace, Grit, and Gaman about Nikkei women, and we're scheduled to open to the public in November or December of this year, 2020. So our organization is located in the heart of Nihonmachi. When our museum opens, we will occupy a total of 3 sites in the neighborhood. We'll have the museum, we will have the JAMO Annex, which is a programming space, and the Japanese American Historical Plaza and Bill of Rights Memorial, a monument and memorial space in Tom McCall Waterfront Park. So today, I'm going to be giving you a short introduction to Portland's Nihonmachi. It will proceed in PowerPoint format, and it will be followed by a short video created by the University of Oregon School of Journalism about the neighborhood. Thank you so much for following along. I hope you enjoy the presentation. Take care. Portland's Nihonmachi is located in a northwest Portland neighborhood, officially known as Old Town in the new Chinatown, Japantown Historic District. As the name suggests, this is one of the oldest neighborhoods in the city. It was platted in the 1840s in Chinook territory, and it's Portland's original downtown. This neighborhood was a bustling confluence of sailors, longshoremen, laborers, Most of the inhabitants were men, and they were from many different ethnic and racial backgrounds. One local historian of the neighborhood has described Old Town as Portland's equivalent of the Lower East Side, in that you have this neighborhood that is multi-ethnic, and it's inhabited by people who, live in this area because in one way or another they were marginalized from mainstream society. The first steady streams of Japanese immigration to Oregon began in the 1890s, about 40 years after Portland had incorporated as a city. Most of these early immigrants were young, unmarried men. They came here to work the region's railroads, lumber yards, farms, and fish canneries. Many of these individuals were brought in to replace Chinese laborers who had immigrated to the region earlier in the 1850s, but were then banned by the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And for those who don't know, the Chinese Exclusion Act, it was this law that forbade the immigration of Chinese laborers and prevented Chinese people from becoming naturalized citizens. It would eventually serve as the blueprint for all subsequent exclusionary immigration laws applied to people around the world seeking to come to the United States. So, for most of these early Japanese immigrants, Portland was actually their first stop. From Portland, Japanese labor contractors would arrange for them to work in other parts of the state, or in Washington, or even Alaska. Something interesting about this is that Portland actually had this really this pretty concentrated presence of Japanese labor contractors, which made the city a major center for the distribution of Japanese railroad workers throughout the Pacific Northwest. Other Japanese immigrants established hotels, restaurants, laundries, stores, barbershops, baths, and even gambling houses to cater to this new population of Issei laborers. And the establishment of these businesses essentially is the beginning of Nihonmachi. Even though many of these Issei laborers worked in other parts of the Pacific Northwest, Portland served as a temporary home. They returned there when they had completed their seasonal work. Laborers would stay in Nihonmachi, living in Japanese-owned hotels, eating at inexpensive restaurants until they found more work. And because most immigrants were unmarried males without families and homes, gambling and prostitution were prevalent in this early Issei community. And, indeed, Old Town as a whole had a reputation as being the city's vice district. In 1890, there were only 25 people of Japanese descent living in Portland, according to the census. But by 1910, Portland's Nikkei population had jumped to 1,200, with many more Nikkei living in the rest of the state. And it seemed that the male-dominated ethnic neighborhood had transformed. More Japanese women had settled in the neighborhood, many of whom arrived as picture brides. And these individuals helped start families and turn Japantown into a district that was actually populated with more family units than bachelors. The presence of more Nikkei women and families and children offers a degree of stability to Nihonmachi and also a sense of quote-unquote respectability. And as early Japanese immigrants matured, married, and started families, many of them decided to start businesses of their own. These were family-owned businesses, and many of the owner-operators lived on site. So some examples are Nikkei families started hotels and apartments. In these types of businesses, families would occupy a few rooms in the building, particularly those with private bathrooms. They operated laundries, barbershops, and groceries in which they lived in the back area. Children who were old enough would help their parents by working in the businesses as well. And, generally these businesses served the local Nikkei population. But some businesses like hotels, apartments, laundries, baths, these businesses served non-Japanese retirees and pensioners as well, people who needed low-rent housing or other inexpensive services. It's notable that Nikkei hotel operators in Portland's Nihonmachi rented rooms to African American workers employed by the railroad and Union Station because white hotel operators in Portland would not rent to them. Retail stores like the Hachiya company pictured here offered shoppers canned goods and other products from Japan, as well as clothing and supplies that people needed to live and work in the region. Lumbermen's caulk boots were sold alongside judo outfits and Stetson hats. The variety of goods for sale offer a reflection of the immigrant experience, in which people have one foot in the motherland and another foot firmly planted in the new world. Despite the passage of the Gentlemen's Agreement in 1907 and the Immigration Act of 1924, which curbed immigration from Japan, and the Alien Land Law of 1923, which hindered Japanese farming in Oregon, despite all of these things, Nihonmachi actually grew pretty steadily. And this growth is largely attributed to the rise of the Nisei generation, most of whom were American citizens by right of birth. So in Oregon, the Nisei population rapidly increased in number. So in 1909, it was 87 individuals. By 1920, that Nisei population had jumped to 994. By 1930, it had jumped once again to 2,361. And by 1940, the total population of Nikkei in the state was over 4,000. And so as this population grows, available space in Nihonmachi begins to fill up. And so because of this, some Nikkei moved and set up businesses in other parts of Portland. Particularly, we see a concentration of migration to the southwest waterfront area, which was only about half a mile away from the original Nihonmachi. The Taylor Hotel, pictured here, is one of these businesses that set up shop in this second Japantown. We also see with this population growth that Nihonmachi begins to develop this very robust community life. So cooperatives like the Japanese Hotel Association and civic groups, including the Japanese American Citizens League, helped the Nikkei community cement ties. The Oshu Nippo, Nihonmachi's Japanese language newspaper, kept the community informed and was distributed throughout Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And as the need developed, 2 Japanese language schools were established in the city, creating bonds between Nisei and Sansei students and Japan. We see that Nikkei children and teenagers socialized with each other and with their Chinese American neighbors. Boys and girls played in organized basketball leagues, and they practiced judo. And one of the things that makes Portland's Nihonmachi very unique is that it's situated within the broader Old Town neighborhood. Along with being home to a vibrant Nikkei community, Old Town was also the center of Portland's Chinese American community, beginning in the 19-teens and 20s. Old Town was also home to significant Jewish, African American, Greek, and Roma populations. and its proximity to Union Station and the waterfront also made it a stop for transient populations. In the photographs here, these images depict neighborhood Chinese and Japanese youth socializing at different events around town. I'd like to end with a short video created by the University of Oregon's School of Journalism. This video, which I'm about to show, features Chisao Hata, JAMO board member, educator, and artist, as well as Jean Matsumoto, a Nihonmachi community elder and camp survivor. I decided to end with this video because I think that it hits on many of the issues of remembrance that our organization grapples with. It also offers a fantastic glimpse of our old museum space, the Memorial Plaza, and Portland's Old Town today. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy it.
If you don't know, why don't you know? There should be no reason why people don't know. It's all our story now. But if it's forgotten, then will it be gone? Will we be an artifact that will later be discovered, but the narrative will be gone? You can call them internment camps, concentration camps, whatever you want to name them, but they were in fact prison camps, and it was a violation of every American right that is the foundation of our Constitution. We think of Old Town, we think of Chinatown, but prior to that was a thriving Japanese town, Japantown.
I'm Jean Matsumoto. Our family lived on 69 Southwest Pine Street. All my friends lived in this neighborhood. This whole neighborhood by the 1920s, 1930s, almost every building that's white had Japanese families. And they had laundries and restaurants and hotels. Things were going pretty good, living in Japantown. And then everything fell apart on December 7th.
People were taken to what then was the Portland Exhibition Hall, now known as the Expo Center. That's where animals were kept, and the animals were moved out, and the stalls were built.
May 6th was when we started being herded into the assembly center. It's amazing how soon you could get used to the smell of manure. We were all under one roof. I don't know how they crammed 3,000 of us in there. We could only take what we could carry, which wasn't very much. It ruined a lot of lives when families lost everything.
It's always amazing to me how many people don't know that that happened. It's not only a loss, but it's like a memory been wiped away, forgotten. And there were a few businesses after the war, not nearly the 300 that existed prior to. That's not just my history. That's Portland's history. That's Oregon's history. That's all of our history as citizens of the state. We are inextricably linked as Japanese Americans, but as American citizens, to that history, that identity, and that rooting in who we are and where we came from and what our personal histories are is what anchors us. when you have a government that's saying, oh, we could maybe reuse those internment camps that Japanese Americans were held in. It does question our knowledge of what America is.